Did you know that rural communities around our country are being devastated by crypto mining? That there have been no studies or reviews of the environmental impact of industrial Bitcoin mining on our local environment and community? That Pend Oreille County does not have the needed rules and regulations in place to protect our communities and local ecology from Bitcoin mining? Did you know that in 2019, the state of Nevada ordered All Rise Capital to cease and desist all business operations in the state due to their illegal business operations? That All Rise Capital and the All Rise Capital Merkle Standard CEO have been under litigation in California for the last year for breach of contract? Did you know that All Rise Capital, China's Bitmain crypto mining plan, threatens Washington's energy security and renewable energy future? Did you know that Bitmain is already funneling Bitcoin to Russia to help them avoid sanctions imposed over their brutal attack on Ukraine? That the U.S. government recently began cracking down on cryptocurrencies because of the threat they pose to national security? If you didn't know, I urge you to watch this presentation. Thanks. I just wanted to share kind of an assessment of some of the risks that I've identified to our local environment, our local quality of life. Risks regarding the corporate community partnership with Merkle Standard, risk to local government institutions and our local economy, risk to our regional environmental and energy security, and then risk to our national security that are involved with this business proposal. So background is, Merkle Standard / All Rise Capital / Bitmain is seeking to create the largest crypto mining facility in the United States using 600 megawatts of hydropower, employing over 150,000 Bitcoin mining machines. So just an idea of the scale of what this project is. Based off of Bitcoin's own mining profit, or Bitmain's mining profit calculator, one of their mining machines at today's Bitcoin rate produces $56 equivalent of Bitcoin a day. That's over $20,000 a year. One container holds 210 of these devices. So in one day, one container produces almost $12,000 of Bitcoin, or $4.3 million a year. And the facility altogether, with 600 containers, or the equivalent of 600 megawatts of production capability, is really what that represents, would be producing $7 million a day equivalent of Bitcoin for $2.6 billion a year. So that's just so you understand what the scale of this project really is. And what about the risks to our local quality of life? If you don't have to search very hard in the internet right now to find a number of articles that have been produced by our leading newspapers on the negative impacts of Bitcoin mining on rural communities that have been targeted by these companies. So this is from the Washington Post. I think it was just published a week ago. An Appalachian town was told a Bitcoin mine would bring an economic boom. It got noise pollution and an eyesore. Residents in the areas that initially welcomed crypto mining are now experiencing buyer's remorse. Nobody did their due diligence and green-lighted what was billed as a solar farm and data center. Kent Harris, a Washington County Commissioner, looks back on his vote authorizing the limestone crypto mining operation and shakes his head. "I have never regretted a vote like this one. I sure wish he could take it back," he said. On 15th of March, a judge agreed with the county that zoning was violated. This was due to their noise impact, but is allowing the mine to stay open pending appeal. In the meantime, residents of Limestone are left grappling with the noise. Here's another one. From the local pastor. Ponder said the Bitcoin mine's noise can make it hard to chat in the parking lot after services. Residents say the noise was like a jet engine idling on a nearby tarmac. We couldn't have people over to gather in our front yard because we could hardly hear one another talking. Residents as far as 5 miles away report hearing the mine. This is from the Wall Street Journal, reflecting experiences in 3 different communities. The 500 people who neighbor the company's computer center got something else, an inescapable drone that is driving many of them crazy. It's comparable to torture. Their whirring noises have left residents who live near cryptocurrency operations in Quebec, Georgia, Montana, and other places agitated and frazzled. Some compare it to a giant dentist's drill, a fleet of helicopters taking off in their backyards. I wear earplugs inside my own house. She can no longer sit on her front porch. The noise sounds like 1,000 hair dryers blowing in unison. There are times when I'm on the lawnmower with earplugs in and I can hear the roar of that thing over that other noise. Joe McMahon, building inspector for the city, said the issue isn't just the level of sound measured in decibels, but the frequency, measured by its ability to irritate. He compared the sound of Bitcoin mines to the whine of an airplane engine revving up on the tarmac. The numbers themselves don't tell the whole story, he said. The racket has forced some people to cover their windows with plywood to keep the sound at bay, he said. People can't go outside because there's so much noise. So what are some of the lessons learned, this review of 6 different communities across the nation? First, residents felt deceived by the crypto mining companies about the impact on their communities. Noise levels significantly degraded quality of life of residents within many miles of the crypto facilities. Reviewed facilities were only a fraction of the size of the prospective Bitmain Merkle Standard facility. Once the crypto mining operations began, they were difficult to stop. Some communities, or small communities, were overmatched by well-financed crypto legal teams. So here's just what's actually being brought in. You can see in the top left here is a an anti-miner container. So these are, when they're bringing the containers into the former PNC mill site, this is what they're bringing in and setting on the pavement. Each one of these containers is a self-contained computer processing center. It holds 210 computer processors. And you can see the copies of the processors. The second processor, this is their newest model, and it uses more advanced hydro cooling systems. The 2 models on the right here are the systems that the company has currently got on site at the mill, or at least that they've admitted to. And you can see one of the biggest concerns is if you look at the manufacturer's specifications for noise level, they're based on at 25 degrees Celsius. And they're putting this at 70 decibels. What Merkle Standard was briefing this last weekend was that their devices make 75 decibels. They're actually using older generation equipment than what this container is. So those specifications that they're giving are not actual operating conditions. First, they're counting in, when you look at this 70 decibels, that's counting hydro cooling. It's for cold conditions. If you think 25 degrees Celsius, 77 degrees Fahrenheit, when you're considering that you'll have hundreds, if they get up to their max, over 700 metal containers sitting on concrete in full exposure of the sun, not counting just the regular ambient temperature, the operating conditions are going to be much higher than 25 degrees Celsius ambient temperature for much of the year. And so, that accords with what people are actually experiencing. Plus, these numbers are for sea level, where air density helps heat transfer a little bit better, and we're a little bit higher than that. So actual noise levels are likely to be much higher at standard operating temperatures, especially in warmer months. And I'd also like to draw your attention to, the water consumption is 1.1 to 1.5 meters cubed per hour. That's roughly 400 gallons an hour. And the flow rate for one of these containers is 22,400 gallons an hour of cooling water. So here's the specifications for their cooling tower. So each one of these containers would have an associated cooling tower. It's actually built into the container. And you can see the heat dissipation capacity, 1,000 kilowatts, outlet temperature at 35 degrees Celsius, or almost 90, beyond 90 degrees. So quite a bit of heat transfer if you multiply this by their intended project scale of over 700 containers. So that's, and the problem is, we just don't have the ordinances, the regulatory tools to deal with this in our community right now. And I think that's one of the reasons why Merkle Standard is so eager to press this into operation so quickly. The second is looking at well, now I think this part will be even more interesting, the corporate community partner risk. So what do we know about Merkle Standard and its parent company, All Rise Capital? So this is a screenshot from the Washington Secretary of State showing that Merkle Standard is a Delaware corporation that is operating in Washington. It is wholly operated by Ruslan Zinneroff, who is also the CEO of All Rise Capital, and it is owned by All Rise Capital. I just bring that up to make sure that there's no question of who Merkle Standard is relative to All Rise Capital. Merkle Standard is All Rise Capital. All Rise Capital is a Delaware holding company operating in California. They were formerly known as All Rise Financial Group, and they are part of a group of companies owned and operated by Vladimir Nikolaevich Evseev and Ruslan Zinneroff. And these companies include Toller Lender Solutions Incorporated, Del Toro Loan Servicing Incorporated, All Rise Real Estate Credit Fund LP, All Rise Direct Lending LLC, All Rise Incorporated, Royal Development Incorporated, American Pacific Mortgage, and now Merkle Standard. Now, one of the concerns when you see a corporate pattern like this is each one of these companies is relatively small in terms of its capitalization. And there's nothing illegal about this, but it is concerning when you see this pattern, because this is a pattern that a company uses to mitigate the risk of its operations, which means that the people operating the company believe that each individual company has a higher risk of litigation, and so they're basically separating their eggs into many different baskets so that litigation won't take away their total fortune. They'll just lose one egg at a time versus the entire basket. And so why would that be a concern? Well, this is just to clarify here that this is from the California Secretary of State's page, just showing that, in fact, All Rise Financial Group that All Rise Capital was, in fact, All Rise Financial Group. So this is a statement or a directive from the state of Nevada ordering All Rise Capital, at that time, again, All Rise Financial Group, and two of the other companies that were associated with it to cease and desist from business operations in the state of Nevada because they were conducting illegal business operations in that state. And that should be very concerning to us. So you'll look at the time, on it says that the CEO of All Rise at that time was Vladimir Nikolaevich Evseev. When they were renamed, Ruslan Zinneroff became the CEO. But at this time, Ruslan Zinneroff was an officer of All Rise Capital or All Rise Financial Group. So he still was a corporate officer of that corporation at the time. So you can see that effectively this forced All Rise to cease operations in the state of Nevada. Again, this is from the Nevada, basically the Secretary of State's, showing the status of the corporations in Nevada. And you can see that All Rise Direct Lending, All Rise Financial Capital were canceled or withdrawn. In fact, All Rise Incorporated was permanently revoked. So again, all corporations that are operated by Evseev and Zinneroff as part of this group of companies. Also, All Rise Capital, Mr. Evseev and Mr. Zinneroff have been under litigation for the last year in the state of California in this court case alleging breach of contract. And that case is currently ongoing, and there has not been a determination of fact by the judge in that case at this point. But again, it's concerning. You'll see it wasn't just Vladimir Nikolaevich Evseev's, Ruslan Zinneroff, and again, I've been talking how they're operating as a group of companies. So you see the companies named here showing that these gentlemen are running these companies and that they are conducting similar business interests in the state of California, just like they were in Nevada. And of course, you remember, what All Rise told us when they purchased the mill, that they were the best hope for reopening the PNC mill. And of course, that's I can show you why that just mathematically has been a fiction. If you compare for the amount of electricity that the mill was using, crypto mining would produce over $1 million a day of equivalent revenue. So I think there's no question that the PNC mill would ever, that they would ever open the mill if they had an opportunity to derive $1 million a day in cryptocurrency for the same amount of electricity. All right, even more concerning than All Rise's background is their partner Bitmain. So Bitmain is a major cryptocurrency mining company. They are based in Beijing. Their domestic operations in China were halted because of the ecological damage that they caused to their local communities was too much for even the Chinese Communist Party. They currently run large Bitcoin mining facilities in Putin's puppet state of Belarus and other Russian-friendly countries like Angola. And, this is an article, Bitcoin falls as China takes aim once again at extremely harmful crypto mining. Chinese authorities are ramping up a crackdown on crypto mining, calling it an extremely harmful practice. Commercial cryptocurrency mining was endangering lives and undermining Xi Jinping's ambitious environmental goals. And also, they pointed out that China accounts for more than 75% of global Bitcoin mining. So this is a Chinese industry, and we can see. So let's follow the money to learn more about Bitmain and All Rise Capital's business relationship. You can understand All Rise Capital refused to answer any direct questions, about their relationship with Bitmain. When I asked this weekend and have not made a whole lot of public statement. Let's follow the money. So one of those Bitcoin mining machines, one of the new ones, one of those machines cost almost $20,000. That's just a little computer CPU unit. So one container of those Bitcoin mining machines, if you include the price of the container, costs $4.3 million. So the equipment for 300 megawatts, to mine 300 megawatts of energy, would be $1.3 billion. And for 600 megawatts is $2.6 billion, not including shipping or installation costs. And if you use some of their older equipment, it would be a little bit, maybe 3.5 to 4.1 million per megawatt of mining capability. But, the most effective ones are about $4.3 million per container. And they've admitted that they haven't actually purchased any of these using their own funds. That this is an equity investment by Bitmain in this operation. So if you compare the effective equity stakes in this project, All Rise Capital has admitted to investing less than $25 million into this project. We know they purchased the mill for $18.1 million. They initially claimed they've spent about $3 million, maybe $4 million to maintain the mill and to prepare it to receive these containers. Whereas Bitmain is already committed to the 300 megawatt equivalent. That's $1.3 billion and up to $2.6 billion if they go to 600 megawatts. So if you compare, red is Bitmain, blue is All Rise Capital is committed less than 2% of the total equity into this operation. And so there's very high risk that All Rise Capital and Merkle Standard is just essentially a front company for the Chinese company Bitmain. Under any normal business conditions or an equity condition like this, Beijing would be the boss. And almost all revenue produced will be remitted to China. Now, let's talk about some of the risks to our local government institutions. So first, we've already seen quite a bit of influence money coming into our community that threatens to corrupt our local government institutions and elections. That's also bothersome that at this point there has been no determination of fact on the local economic benefit, if any, that Merkle Standard will actually bring. We won't know what the property tax revenue will be from their company until later this summer. They're going to produce huge profits, but only a tiny, tiny return to Pend Oreille County. Given the possible ecological damage, it may actually hurt the economy more than it helps it. They're likely to provide fewer local economic jobs or likely less economic benefit than the PNC mill provided. When I asked them directly about what jobs would be available to residents of Pend Oreille County, they basically refused to answer. They said they acknowledged that the existing staff that they have to maintain the mill, and they said that there would be some entry-level jobs available. But other than that, they refused to commit to any other jobs being available to residents of the Pend Oreille County. I'd also like to point out that it precludes future development options for the county. Basically, this will max out our power infrastructure, more than max out our power infrastructure. And there will be no options for any future industrial or major commercial development, let alone significant residential development. I also like to point out that Bitcoin itself has an uncertain future under increasing national and global crackdowns. Over 1,000 different cryptocurrencies have already failed. The Biden administration recently announced a crackdown on Bitcoin that likely influenced how the business is conducting in the United States. And I'd like to point out that the mining infrastructure is literally containerized and ready to move out at a moment's notice. So even if we take away the environmental concerns and the Chinese concerns, this project could literally disappear tomorrow as they move to another location, or the Bitcoin mining market collapses. I'd like to address environmental and energy security risks. We already know that in our local environment that absolutely no studies have been done on the impact of the heat, water usage, sound in terms of decibels or frequencies on wildlife for our area, and so we're walking blind into a potential ecological disaster. What are the opportunity costs of 600 megawatts of hydropower? That's the same as 1,200 wind turbines. That's more than half of the power needed to power the city of Seattle. That's 10% of Bonneville Power Administration's annual hydropower production. So this represents a regional risk if we are looking to create a renewable energy future for the Pacific Northwest. This presents a clear and present danger to that future. And what are we getting for it? Chinese Bitcoin. I'd like to address some of the national security risks. So just recently, President Biden labeled crypto as a national security threat. I'll explain why in a little bit more. So this is from the U.S. Treasury Secretary. Some of his comments. I will focus primarily on the serious concerns the Treasury has of the growing misuse of cryptocurrency by money launderers, terrorist financiers, and other bad players. Cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin have been exploited to support billions of dollars of illicit activity like cybercrime, tax evasion, extortion, ransomware, illicit drugs, human trafficking, and many players have used cryptocurrency to support their malign behavior. This is indeed a national security issue. I'd like to point out that he said this was well before the war in Ukraine. This is from the National Interest. Bitcoin is a threat to national security. Bitcoin is an anarchist dream, offering a currency falling outside the control of any central banking or government authority and beyond the intermediary moderation levers of the Bretton Woods global banking system. It was designed to serve as the perfect anonymous digital medium for the direct purchase of any kind of good or service. Iran, North Korea, and other rogue states are already using Bitcoin to avoid state sanctions. The threat to U.S. national security interests posed by Bitcoin becomes even more acute when China is taken into account. Today, over 65%, which actually has grown to 75% from when this was published, a Bitcoin global market supply originates in China. This situation leaves the Chinese Communist Party in the catbird seat. This is from Newswax. China is underwriting Putin's Ukraine war. Here's an article that came out 1 week after the beginning of the Ukraine war. Cryptocurrency purchases in rubles are at a record high following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, raising questions about whether piling into the likes of Bitcoin can help Moscow get around sanctions. Cryptocurrencies that operate on a decentralized network and are not directly affected by sanctions. Crypto data provider Keiko has reported record high purchasing volumes of Bitcoin and rubles since last week's invasion. At the same time, North Korea and Iran have succeeded in getting around sanctions thanks to cryptocurrencies. Again, most of those being provided via China. This is from the Wall Street Journal a week ago. European Central Bank says Russians use crypto to bypass sanctions. Russian individuals and corporations are trying to bypass international sanctions by converting the rubles into cryptocurrencies. Crypto assets are certainly being used as we speak as a way to circumvent the sanctions that have been decided by many countries around the world against Russia. As we look at what are the strategic risk factors for how that crypto can actually be transferred to Russia, there's a couple of things that you would look at. So first, do the organizations involved have business connections with bad actors in Russia. And with both All Rise Capital, which has strong business connections in Eastern Europe, and Bitmain, both check that off. Do they have a historical disregard for law? Basically, are they trustworthy citizens of our national order? All Rise Capital and Bitmain have both shown that they are not. Do they value Russian rubles? This is probably the most important because, for Russia to accrue it, they have to buy those in rubles. And an American doing crypto in his basement has no interest in trading it for Russian rubles because they're basically worthless here. But if you have strong business interests in Eastern Europe, or you're a Chinese company where most of your Bitcoin is being remitted back to China, can be sold to Russia at a premium for rubles, and those rubles can then be used to purchase oil, gas, fertilizer, weapons technology from China. It's a good deal. And finally, ideological alignment with China and Russia. We really don't know to be honest, what All Rise's Capital's, what their owner's ideological alignment is, but we certainly know what Bitmain's is. My conclusions is that this venture, if it's allowed to go forward, will present a significant risk to our local environment and quality of life. There's a significant risk of the corporate community partnership due to these corporations' history of bad acting. Risk to local government institutions and our economy, risk to our regional environmental and energy security, and risk to our national security. And pending your questions, this completes my briefing.